Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk.
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
Broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to DABCC Radio. My name is Doug Brown, and I am your host for today. I'm your host for every day, every episode we do. And today we have a great episode for you. We have Avanite. It's a company you might not have heard of. If you have, you know these guys and you love these guys. They make a great solution to a real big problem. And I absolutely love solutions like this, products like this, because what these guys did is they found a problem and they solved it. Period. End of story. So we have one of their co-founders, a gentleman named Francesco, with us, and he is he's an old Citrix guy. Really, he's been around since the WinFrame days, and living in the trenches like a lot of us. And so he's solved a problem, and with his co-founder, they created Avanite. And today we're going to talk about what all that means. So with no further ado, let's just jump into my interview with Francesco from Avanite. Okay, Francesco, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us. A long time coming, right? So let's share what the amazing stuff that you guys are doing, because it's really neat what you're doing. So before we get to that, though, the first question is always, who are you? So who are you, and what do you do over at Avanite?
My name's Francesco Giarletta. I've been in the area of virtual computing for quite a while now. When I first started off my career, I actually went into virtual reality and did things like virtual prisons and virtual submarines and that sort of stuff, which was really interesting. But I ended up looking after the network, and how these things tend to sort of grow on you. I then moved to my first consultancy company and had an introduction to Citrix there. And it was WinFrame 1.7. But my first install was actually 1.7a, I've got to say. Ever since then, I've lived Citrix, basically. So I moved from consultancy to consultancy, sort of worked my way up, did a bit of contracting, and then was offered a role to join AppSense. And that was in 2004. So I joined AppSense as a pre-sales consultant originally, moved on to one of their solutions architects. I looked after the support desk, set up pro services for them. They're from the early days and sort of saw them grow.
That's cool.
It was very interesting, because it's good to see something small develop into something that really made a difference and was a market leader. So that was very interesting. Left AppSense and went and did some contracting for HP, where I was involved in a lot of the public sector projects that were underway. So we did a desktop refresh for the likes of the Ministry of Justice, Department of Work and Pensions over here, and a large Ministry of Defence project, which is 200,000 users. So that was quite interesting. And I think that was the time when I talked to a guy called Peter Jones, who's now CTO of Avanite, and basically turned around and said, "You're really good at what you do. I'm really good at what we do. How about we start a consultancy company up?" So when we started off, we were literally all about consultancy and make it the best consultancy company that you can.
That's cool. And then, so we'll get into Avanite here in a second, but it's sort of interesting to listen to you take through your past, because it's almost in many ways it's close to mine. I started with WinFrame 1.7. My first deployment was my first deployment, I was introduced to WinFrame 1.6, and then my first deployment was 1.7, but it went south because of DOS graphics, and it didn't print DOS graphics. So they said, no, we can't use it. And it was actually at a funeral home. I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but it was at a funeral home. And in those days, you put the servers, it wasn't in a nice data center in a place like that. It was in a closet right by where wheeled the bodies through. So they were in bags, but still, I'm sitting there working on, building a WinFrame server as they're wheeling bodies past me all day long. And I'm like, this place, I've had enough. Please get me out of here. So when they said, it doesn't, it won't work for us, like, okay, no problem. See you later. I didn't try to convince them. Otherwise, I was gone like the wind, right?
Yeah, I've definitely been into customers where to get to the server, you've got to contort yourself into some very strange positions. That's for sure.
That's exactly right. So, and then, and now and then you go into consulting and things like that. Next thing you know, you're a business guy, and you're like, hey, how did that happen, right?
Absolutely.
But the blood is still consulting, and it's all about solving people's problems. So. And then AppSense, I have to say, I love AppSense, especially, old AppSense.
That's it.
It was where I have the special place in my heart, right? The Tonys and the Charlies and guys like you and Simon and John Wallace. And, those guys are just Simon Rust, right? You can't forget him. And, that old group of people that, I just have a very soft place in my heart for those guys too.
It was a really special time. I've got to say, it was a very good atmosphere to work in. It was very family orientated. You really wanted to go there, and as a company, it was all about doing the right thing by the customer as well, which I was impressed with.
Yeah, it was one of the few companies I think I probably would have worked for if it worked out. I really liked those guys. I really did. I love all AppSense with a passion. So you start off Avanite. Can you give us the sort of the 40,000? We'll start peeling the layers off the onion, as I like to say. But can you give us the 40,000-foot view? Why did you start it? What was the goal?
Well, as I said, when we started off, the idea was to become a consultancy company. So we didn't intend to be a software company. We did intend to write little utilities and little solutions, but literally just to support what we were doing consultancy-wise, basically. As you probably know, especially on the AppSense side, finding an expert is quite difficult. So we did have a sort of leading edge about being in the company for so long and seeing it develop. We changed to a software company because we were working on the Ministry of Defence project I was telling you around, and we were leads for the AppSense implementation there. And basically what we found was the space we'd allocated for user profiles, and obviously being AppSense, it was a SQL database, was getting chewed up a lot quicker than we'd estimated. So we'd estimated about 15 megabytes a user for user profile space, which is a lot in AppSense, to be fair, especially the way it compresses everything. But we were seeing users growing to 50, 60 megabytes. And when we did some investigation, we found it was due to a particular database, which is the web cache database that Microsoft introduced. And nobody else had a solution, and we saw that a lot of people were shouting about it. You check the Citrix forums, the Microsoft forums, everybody's saying, I've got this file which is hundreds of megs, what do I do with it? So not having a solution, we contracted a developer in, put a POC together, put a version 1, and pretty much sold it pretty quickly. So that was where we started off, really.
Well, that's interesting. That's like AppSense, right? AppSense was founded the same exact way.
Absolutely. That was basically from Application Manager. And they were in a Citrix implementation, because AppSense came out of what was ViStorm in the days, which was big Citrix consultancy. And one of the guys from the customer turned around and said, my problem is I've got people downloading stuff from the internet and running it. How do I stop it? And Application Manager was born.
You got it. But those are the best products, right? It's not a product that's looking for looking for a solution, right? Or looking for a problem, right? Or solution looking for a problem, but it's a problem. It's a solution that solves a problem.
Absolutely.
So cool. So originally you were doing, I think you originally called it what, Web Cache Manager, if my memory serves me correct. And,
we did.
And since then, it's not. You've changed the name a bit. So can you explain, can you explain that history and bring us sort of up to today, and then we'll dive into what you guys are, the current version of the product.
Yeah, absolutely. So we originally called our product, as you say, Web Cache Manager, and that's because this database that I'm talking about is named webcache v01.dat, and that was our problem child, basically. So we needed a solution to manage that file. Now, that database is all to do with internet communications. It's actually a change that was made to the WinINet subsystem in Windows. So that came out with Windows 8 and Internet Explorer 10. And basically, it's a central store now for all your web data that comes through. So although you still had cookie files on disk, the browser didn't actually talk to cookie files. The browser would talk to the database that would then reference the cookie files. So to keep user data between the sessions, you needed to store this big database as well. We changed the name because basically we moved on. And rather than just looking at Internet Explorer and what it was doing, we branched out into other browsers. So naturally, the one that came along was Edge, because Edge also uses WinINet, which uses the web cache database, as does a lot of the Windows Store apps in Windows 10. So people don't realize that these applications always talk to a back end. So even something as simple as Candy Crush has DOM store, has cookie files, has browsing history, has temporary internet files, etc., all associated with it. And obviously all this is taking up space on your hard drive. We expanded out into Chrome and Firefox, which are now fully supported in the same way. So it became less about the web cache and more about the actual data itself. And with version 3, we took it a step further, where we actually started to examine the data a lot more. So previously we would do cleanups based on access time, whitelist, blacklist functionality a little bit in there. But we started to look closer at the data, and particularly the one that everyone focuses on is obviously the cookies, which are big news with GDPR and privacy and all of that. And what we found was there were people with 50,000 cookies on their machine. And a lot of them were expired, a lot of them were defunct, and a lot of them were actually from third parties. So not actually the website that you're browsing to, but the ones that they connect to. And the majority of these, again, are down to tracking and advertising, which is big business. But as I say, it's hot at the moment. Everybody knows privacy is a big thing. So we introduced functionality in the product to actively target particular types of web data. And that's pretty much why the reason of the name change came along and the development path that we took at the time.
Very interesting. So in the nut of it, you guys are able to kill off cookies, right?
We kill off everything associated with browsing, essentially. So if you choose a particular site, we can deal with the cookies that are delivered. We can deal with the history, the temporary internet files, the DOM store, etc., etc. All of those little bits.
You got it. On the surface, that might seem sort of trivial, right? But I know it's not. Can you maybe explain sort of the technical and business reasons why that's important?
Absolutely. I mean, if we look at just the size of databases, The web cache itself starts life at 32 megabytes. And as you use your system, it grows and grows. And the biggest one I've realistically heard of is a 9 gigabyte database. That's rare, though to have databases which are a few hundred megabytes isn't. So, the largest we've seen is around about 2.5 gigabytes. So this is in your profile. If you want to keep the data for your users, as well as taking the cookies with you, you've got to take these databases. And I think, everybody knows about profile bloat. We've spent years and years trying to fix profile bloat, and we pretty much got there. What I'm now seeing is this whole web data probably accounts for a good 85% of the size of your user profile today. So we've seen some dramatic reductions with our customers. And it's to do with storage, but more importantly to the user, it's actually to do with login times. So we've seen some massive improvements in login times, literally up to 90%. We've cut down login times, and that's still the major reason why people come to us. Even after all these years, they want to speed their logins up. So it's, how can I do that? And that's the biggest effect to the customer, is to the user. It makes their experience much better. They log on much faster. Browser performance is greatly improved, and yeah, we've seen that when this starts to fill up, you'll get pages timing out, you'll get all sorts of stuff. We've even had customers where the applications they're running don't work in a particular browser. A lot of people have implemented Chrome today because one of their business applications won't work in IE.
Sure.
We've had customers who have actually put our product in, and by blacklisting those actual applications so the data isn't stored, it actually makes them work back in IE again. So it's a good knock-on effect. I think we're finding things every day, because the whole subject of web data and how it works and what have you, there's not a lot of information out there. So we've had to do a lot of work to just build up the knowledge to be able to pass on.
Absolutely. That's very interesting. And what about security? You mentioned security too. Definitely tracking and things of that nature. Can you maybe talk about some of the security implementation? I am having trouble. My tongue is twisted today. It's the end of the day for me. It's the end of the week. Can you talk about the security bits of it, please?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the security, it depends whether you call it security, privacy, and where does it fit. I like to call it either privacy or it's more business security for me, rather than, what us techies would call security, which is your firewall or your antivirus, for example. And this is generally about these third-party cookies, though a lot of them can come from first parties as well, which are then placed on your machine. So this cookie file itself is just a little text file, so you can open it. And in it, you'll see where it's been delivered from, and you'll see a text payload in there. Basically, what happens is as you connect to a website, you'll connect to this website who's put this particular cookie down, and there's an ID in there, which they say is an anonymous ID. So it doesn't identify you. But it's on my machine and it's in my profile. So why would it not identify me? However, what they then do is they get that connection through. So you've got a connection through from the client to the server, and they can then monitor what you're doing, basically. And this is the reason why you'll go to Amazon, you'll browse for, I want a new dog basket. And then the next website you hit, all you get is adverts about dog baskets. They've basically taken that information and then they've distributed it out to the advertisers, who will then use the information to send you targeted adverts. Now, the worrying part of things is when we actually look within these databases. So within the web cache, for example, there are different history tables. So one is used for your browsing history you actually see in the browser. One is a lot more detailed. And what we've seen there, in particular what was worrying, was we had an insurance company that came to us and we analysed one of their web cache databases. And within it, we could see the URL of their main finance application, which was in the cloud. I could see the username and I could see passwords. So every time a user changed the password, I could see the old password and the new password. And then there were account numbers and things like that. And it's all these hidden URLs and redirections that you don't see. Now, the fault there is possibly down to the people who actually wrote the application. But the issue is, I've got it on my machine and it's sat there and it's actually in plain text, not encrypted. So there is definitely a knock-on effect, because today everybody's been, GDPR's come along, everyone's secured the data, they've encrypted the databases, they've encrypted all the Word documents, but there's a whole load of data sat on your machine that you don't know about. And that's the danger that I see with GDPR today, is you could get a breach or a leak due to something that you have no idea, and it's purely because of the way an application works.
Interesting. I was going to ask you about GDPR. I mean, it's such a big thing. We're sort of stuck with this. I don't like the law personally. I think it sort of messes things up. But and the bad guys, they still do it anyway. I still get the emails asking me to buy customer lists.
Oh, absolutely.
But they don't comply with the law. It's the good guys that suffer. But it's a good thing also, right? Privacy is something that I think that many people don't understand or care about. It's older people.
I think it's something which people don't realise to the extent that it's in use today. Yeah. You'll go into a store today and you'll buy something. The first thing they'll ask you for is your email address. And it's like, why do you want to know my email address? And it's not to send you an invoice. It's literally because they will get that data and they will sell on the data that says this person purchased this, so they have an interest in this. And it all leads to what they call user profiling.
Yep.
And get information from everywhere that you can, compile it up, and I then know everything about you.
Yep. It's your fingerprint. It's your digital fingerprint, right?
Absolutely. I was talking to one of the councils over here in England, and they wanted to use it. What they said, they're going to put wireless hotspots in all the street lamps around the town where they were from. And I thought, that's great. That means that everywhere I go, I'm going to be online, and I'm going to be online via Wi-Fi. No, that's not the purpose. The purpose is they can then track where you are, and they can send you adverts for shops which you are walking towards. So it's big business. I mean, Facebook is free, but Facebook makes a hell of a lot of money, and
yeah, you bet.
They make it from advertising. It's simple.
You bet. I mean, it's sort of interesting to see what Apple's coming out in their latest OS, right? Or their, the one that's coming out, Mojave, I guess they call it. And they do a similar, in some ways, what you guys bring to Windows, to the Windows world, right? Where they're sort of killing off this digital fingerprint that's being created. But you guys bring that to the enterprise, which is even better, into our Citrix servers and what have you. So you did mention, you we're able to, manage all this data, all these cookies and what have you. But there are some good cookies out there, right? There's some things that we want to keep. And you mentioned you can sort of identify how does that work? Can you help the customer identify what's good or bad? How does that work? Yeah,
the big problem, as sort of alluded to earlier, is there's not a lot of information out there, which means there's not actually a lot of standards that are around this. So there's nothing really which defines what it is. But if you do open your cookie file, what you'll see is that they all have a name and then underscore and a few letters after them. So that's what we use to identify the cookie itself. So if we see a cookie with an underscore GA, for example, we know that's a Google Analytics cookie. But the only way we've known it is through hard work and digging around. So we believe we've covered on the whole marketing, advertising front. With our latest release, we've probably hit definitely all the big boys and definitely round about 85%, I would say, of all the ones that are out there. It's now that long tail, if you like, of the occasional ones which people uses. But your Adobes, your Microsofts, your Googles, etc., we've got all them. So we've made it as simple as possible. In the product, you tick a box which says remove marketing and tracking cookies. Where we work with the customer is more on what websites they're actually hitting. So we look at the first-party websites, we look at the third-party websites that they're hitting, and crucially, we talk to them about what's actually important to them. You know, which websites, which web applications, because those are the ones they want to save the data for, essentially. So we tend to whitelist them for the customer. What is it you definitely don't want? That goes into a blacklist. We remove the tracking and marketing cookies, and then with the rest of the stuff, and this is to do with working patterns today more than anything else, because users today want a different experience when they're at work from, you know, the day when me and you were doing WinFrame. They've all got devices now. They want to use things the way they do at home. They want to be able to go to work and log into Facebook. So for all the stuff that's sort of in the middle, then you could give it a really short retention rate. So, okay, I'll save the data. So if you go back to the site, you're not being prompted again. It's still a good experience. But I'm only going to save it for a couple of days, because if it's one site you visited occasionally, I'm not interested in it. So there's a lot of configuration you can do. To be fair, we give you a configuration out of the box. So today, if you download an evaluation version of our product, you literally just have to install it. On the install, you'll be prompted for an email address. Then you'll automatically be sent a login to Microsoft Azure, and your configuration is built in, your 14-day license is built in, and it's a bog standard configuration, but you will start to see big results. Then you can log into the Azure and you'll actually get before and afters. So you'll be able to see what change it's made on your system.
Cool. I was going to ask you, my next question was going to be reporting. So, you know, what type of information do you provide back to the, you know, to the customer, right, to the admin?
Yeah, well, I'll say on the evaluation side, and today the reporting is only for evaluations, and that's literally simply because of the fact we've put it into Azure first. So we just want to sort of manage that side of things. But we can do personal Azure, we can do on-site. That's what you're going to be seeing coming off next, basically. You've got AWS, Azure, and on-prem reporting for the full product. So that'll be in the next release. What can we give you as information? Well, we can tell you who's been where. We can tell you which websites have been hit. I know one of the customers we were talking to was particularly interested in that information because they want to use it to feed into their proxy servers, for example, and know what to block and what not to block. There's one customer who's particularly interested in that one at the moment. So they have monitoring products which do that from the desktop, but all they can actually see is the first party. They just see what people type into the URL. I obviously see everything that's happening in internet access. So I can tell you what you can block. I can tell you what you can allow. Sometimes you have a happy medium, which is where we still have a play there because, you know, you go to some websites and as you said, some cookies are good. So if I go to the BBC website, I can set my location for the weather and that will set a cookie on my machine. So I know every time I go back, the weather will be in my location. But they also set cookies which I don't particularly want on my machine because they're tracking my movement around their sites. So in that scenario, I can identify the ones that I want, the ones that I remove, and just keep the ones that I want, basically.
Cool. All in real time then?
It's not in real time. So that's where we're sort of looking at the moment. One of the big problems with becoming in real time is, one thing we didn't want to do was integrate into the browser in any way. So we didn't want to be a browser helper object or the like of an ad block or anything like that, because what you tend to find is if you interfere with the data at that point in time, the web page doesn't work.
Yeah.
And BBC, I was talking about, I was on their privacy pages yesterday, and they said you can block third party from your browser, as an example, but our site won't work with it. So, you sort of get stuck in that scenario.
Makes sense. Yeah, totally makes sense. And then also there's a load that you put on it too. And
well, go ahead. It is, and the other big problem is that the web cache database actually gets loaded at logon time, and it doesn't get released until you actually log off.
So when do you kill it off? When you log off then?
When you log off, then all the locks to it are then sort of taken off, and this has been one of the biggest problems the profile management solutions, such as Ivanti and Liquidware and what have you, have had, is the locks previously weren't released before they were trying to capture data. So they've now written that into their code. But obviously we have our own code as well, because the database has data which is written very lazily to it. And what you have to make sure is you play all the log files in before you do the disconnects through. And a lot of people are missing that, and potentially you've got data loss with it as well.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So how do you see the product? I mean, you mentioned a few things already, but how do you see the product evolving moving forward?
Well, we are becoming more real time. So today we can do Firefox and Chrome when you shut the browser. So we are what we're calling near real time, if you like. And we're trying to bring that to the other browsers and other applications as well. I'm trying to answer your question without saying too much, Doug, so apologies.
Yeah, this is always a question that's,
it's always a tough one.
I love asking the future question, but, sometimes I get nothing, sometimes I get a little bit.
Well, where we want to be is we want to be in control of the data. We don't want all the third parties to be in control. So I think the best way to do that is potentially to get hold of the data before the browser does, and sort of put a whole management infrastructure around this whole web data type stuff. So that's where we're exploring into. But it is becoming more real time. It is going to become more of a security product. I was talking with Christian Riley recently, and he was saying that in Japan, I believe, and in South Korea, they actually have in law now that for businesses, they cannot use the same browser or indeed the same machine for private browsing and for business browsing. So what they do today is they have their business browser installed locally on the machine, and their private browser is a Citrix published app. And as soon as they log out of that, it's just killed off. That doesn't give the user a great experience. We want to be in the position where you don't have to do things like that. We can manage all of that for you, basically.
Makes total sense. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So if somebody wants to learn more, what do they need to do? You mentioned a trial.
Well, the first thing we have is if you hit our website at avanite.com, on the front page, you will find a link to our free analysis tool. This is a great little piece of kit. You literally just download it and run it on your machine. So there's no installation, no nothing. And it will run through and basically tell you what web data control would actually do for you. So it'll say, this is what your database sizes are to start off with. This is what they would be down to. This is what your number of cookies you've got. This is what it'll be down to, etc. So they'll give you some nice, pretty graphs. That will give you an idea as to if you have a problem and whether your problem is worth exploring or not. At which point, back to the website, and as you say, register, download for an evaluation. Everything's built in, so we won't bug you for it. We'll allow you to take it, install it. You just need to install the client. In the full product, we are configured totally via group policy. But as I said, we've put a built-in configuration. So install the client. There's an audit mode time, which lets us, should I say, gather data on your existing system. Because obviously if we ran first time round, we wouldn't get a before and after. So you can set an audit mode period, and then after that, the software will actually kick in, and you'll be able to see the results. And if it works for you, then great.
Very cool. Very, very cool. I like what you guys do. I definitely do. That's really neat stuff. So, yeah. Is there anything? I mean, it's so simple. This is what I love too. It just solves a problem, a big problem. But there's not a lot to it, which is great. You know. Is there anything we left out?
I don't think so. I say the biggest issue that we're seeing is people's knowledge of it and people's education. You know, I've sat up and I've given talks at events and things like that we've attended, and I've had people stand up in the audience and say, I knew none of this. Even without going back to the office and looking, I know I've got the problem. And I think that's where we're at. Like I said, and you said previously, we're techies at the end of the day. Both myself and Pete, who are the founders of the company, are both techies. As far as we're concerned, we think there's a major problem out there, and we'd like to try and help you fix it. Which is why, if you don't think if it's right for you, there's no hard sell. It's fine, no problem.
You got it.
I'm glad you're working well.
Exactly. But I think probably a good chunk of people, if not most people, do run into this issue because it's it's the nature of the beast, right?
It's core Windows. So essentially, if you're running Windows and you've got any sort of internet access, you're going to have the problem, unfortunately.
The nature of the beast. So it's by design.
It is. And, I said, we're all about helping people. The beauty of it is, price-wise, it's as much as a cup of coffee. It's under $10 a year for the user.
That's not bad at all. That's great. It's absolutely great. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, perfect. So, again, where do they go to get it?
So it's www.avanite.com. And, of course, we're on all the social media. So you'll find us on Twitter, Avanite Limited, LinkedIn, and Facebook also, obviously, and YouTube. And the good news is, for those of you who hit our website and don't like the look of it, it is under development at the moment, so there will be a brand new one available. But it's nature of the beast of growing businesses, isn't it, Doug?
Yeah.
You start off and you have to build and build each time.
Yeah, exactly. And although new DABCC is, I think, pretty, but the old DABCC turned into a really ugly beast.
That's it. It's great for now, but come tomorrow when you've got different things, you have to revisit sometime and start again.
You got it. Well, perfect. And really, I don't care what your website looks like. I'm not there to look at a website. I'm there to download the product and give it a shot.
Absolutely.
That's all I care about.
Yep.
Well, perfect. So, guys out there listening, definitely check this stuff out because, I know a few people that have, and everyone that I've talked with definitely loves it. So it's a great solution to solve a really key problem. And like we said, this is a problem related to Windows. It's sort of a nature that I call it the nature of the beast. It's everybody has it, and so let's solve it. And it's not not expensive to solve, and that's a great thing. So on that note, go ahead and give you the last word if there's anything we left out. But if not, I think we're done, right?
Yeah, I believe so. As I said, thanks for the opportunity of talking to you, Doug. I know we've spoken a few times, and the good news is that you've been eager to show this off as much as we have because you believe in it. And I think people who've seen it tend to. The results do speak to themselves. So I encourage people to give it a go. Giving it a go takes a little bit of time, but doesn't cost anything. You might be surprised by the results that you see. I said login times reduced by 90%, profile sizes reduced by 85%, they're not little numbers that we're talking about.
That right there is worth it.
That's it.
I'd forget about everything else. That right there is worth it. Just login time alone is worth it.
That's it. So, absolutely.
It's amazing. You think after 20 years that login time would not be an issue, but it definitely is.
It gets more of an issue rather than less, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
And that's what you say. People are used to the home experience now. Yeah. You turn your iPad on, it's there. When I go into work, I've got to sit and wait for a few minutes before I can work. What's going on? So, one of those things we'll always be chasing, I think.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's the nature. What do I say? It's the nature of the beast. At the end of the day, it's the nature of the beast. And people used to ask me, Doug, why do we have these problems? I was like, welcome to Windows. This is why we have jobs. And you guys have found a problem, and you solved that problem. And this is what I love about technologies like yours. It's not bloatware. It doesn't do everything and then some. It doesn't cure cancer. It sees one problem and it solves it extremely well. And that's something everyone should have. So I'm really happy to have you on. I'm happy to share this. Guys, definitely check it out. And if you don't find it on the web, the show notes have all the links and that you need. But it's pretty simple. Just Google Avanite and away you go. And what else do I say? But Francesco, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. I really enjoyed it.
No, I appreciate your time, Doug.
It's my pleasure. On that note, we'll call it an episode. Thanks, buddy.
All right, take care.
Okay, that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. As always, I want to thank my guest for today, Francesco from Avanite. And these guys really, they at the end of the day, these guys really make a great solution. They honestly do. Because what they do is they found a problem that's a real problem that other people aren't addressing, and they solved it. And this is what I love. These are the type of products I absolutely adore. They're not heavy. They're not bloat. It's not, rocket science. It just works, and it solves that problem. So definitely check out what they're doing. Head on over to their website and give it a download, and I think you guys will absolutely love it. And I think you'll be amazed at the end of the day. If you do, let me know. I'd love to know what you think, but definitely let them know. But hopefully it solves your problem. So on that note, the most important people in the world are you, the listener. Without you, I just sit here and ramble to myself, and I don't want to do that. I ramble enough the way it is. I don't need to ramble to myself. So thank you very much for listening and making DABCC Radio a success. One of my favorite things I'm doing with iGel in my evangelist job is going out and meeting all you guys in person. And I used to do that a lot, but now I'm doing it even more. And one of the things that amazes me most about that is there's not an event I've gone to where I haven't ran into someone that says, hey, I listen to DABCC Radio and I absolutely love it. And that makes me so happy. Not just from a selfish standpoint, but from a, hey, we're actually doing something useful for you guys. So thank you very much. Please, if you see me, let me know. Because it makes me want to do more of these things. So I enjoy it as much as, probably more than, as much as you do. I don't know about more, but I enjoy it very much. And what else do I say? But thank you guys for listening to DABCC Radio. Check out the website, www.dabcc.com. Check out avanite.com. Check out igel.com. Check out every website in the world. Have fun browsing the web. Spend a whole day browsing the web. We do that too much. But, thank you all for listening to DABCC.
CC?
DABCC.
Say it again, DABCC.
DABCC.
Can you say it again, DABCC?
DABCC.
How about DABCC?
DABCC.
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 DABCC.